So let me tell you a bit about what's going to be happening for the rest of the day. So here's today's program. The event is called Coming Together, Arts and Cultural Networks for Sustainability. We're in the welcome part of the session. I'm welcoming you now and taking you through today's program. After I finish this bit of the welcome, Emma is going to tell us about our in-person house, Low Carbon Devon, and then I am going to come back and tell you about the project in which this event is located, which is called Transitioning to Sustainable Production Across the UK Theatre Sector. But this event is about linking and networking the theatre sector beyond, across other sectors, both art forms and governmental and cultural and business-wise and so on. We're then going to be moving into a session called Creating Networks, and Rachel and Emma are going to be presenting here live, and Simon is going to be presenting from Manchester, unfortunately is unwell today, and then we're going to take a lunch break. During the lunch break, we will be showing a film from Greenmakers Initiative, but basically we'll be eating lunch, and if you're here online, we'd like you can always sign back in afterwards if you want to go away and come back in. And that's actually really important to say. You're welcome to come and go as you please. There's obviously nobody is holding you to anything. You're welcome to attend in any way and in any form that makes you comfortable. In the afternoon, after lunch, we're having a session on measuring and evaluating. Then we're taking a 15-minute tea break. We're moving into a session on green connectivity, which really is about how different networks and sectors and communities and art forms can work together. And then we'll have a final goodbye and we'll be finished up by 4:30. If you're joining us from home, we switched your mics off when you came in. Please feel free to use chat. As I said, we're going to try to pick up as many questions and comments as we can as we go along. Right, and with that, I'm going to hand over to Emma to do a welcome and explain a bit more about Low Carbon Devon.
So we're here in person in the Sustainability Hub, which is where Low Carbon Devon is based, which is a European funded project. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that project because it has relevance for today. And so Low Carbon Devon is a £2.6 million project, which has had various different stages to it. So the first stage was the retrofit of the Sustainability Hub into what it is now as a beautiful building with an internal, external green wall. There's been a carbon reduction programme across the University of Plymouth, and I should have said that, we're in the University of Plymouth. There's been a knowledge exchange programme and a large-scale internship programme over 35 student and graduate interns so far, support for Devon-based SMEs, and 4 areas of research. And those areas of research are green and living wall, energy efficient buildings, solar PV and power electronics, and the creative industries. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing in the creative industries area. So we're looking at how the creative industries are addressing the low carbon agenda, and how we're also asking how can Devon's creative industry SMEs engagement be fostered and developed. And the low carbon agenda, that's kind of a big question. So just to sort of put it in a nutshell, we, as the Low Carbon Devon project, are aligned with Devon Climate Emergency. And they are a consortium of councils, over 38 councils across Devon, universities, organisations, and they have developed this, the Devon Carbon Plan with the People's Assembly, very large scale. It's just been recently launched after over 2 years. And these are 5 areas that the Devon Carbon Plan addresses the low carbon agenda. So I'm not going to go into that, but just to kind of ground it, really. And when I first started working on the project with Low Carbon Devon, I started talking to lots of different creative industries, practitioners from larger organisations to micro businesses. And these were the 5 key things that people were saying to me. I kept hearing this over and over again. So they wanted funding to pay for their time, equipment, materials or specific expertise, support with publicising their work or other events, opportunities to network with others, which is what we're doing here, support to reduce their carbon footprint, and support to engage in climate change, environment and low carbon agenda. And so the way that we've been addressing that are in these particular different areas. So investigating, working with creatives, working with umbrella organisations, and writing funding bids and facilitating funding to try and address all those 5 different areas. And so just a quick blast through here of some projects we've been working with. Kate Crawford, who's in the physical audience today, so I'm sure she'd like to say hello to you. Precious Plastics, Plymouth and Tavistock started with Kate. We've got Oscar McNaughton, Ian Coxall, graduates who are taking waste plastic, household plastic, and recycling them into beautiful objects. And we've been working on these different things, so with funding, publicity, communications, networking, a whole range of different projects. One of the areas that we've been working on is the Net Zero Visions project, which is a funding bid with Dr. David Sargent. He was the principal investigator and a co-investigator on that project, and that's how can we work with creatives to help communities across Devon visualise how their towns and cities can become net zero. And that's a big commissioning programme, and we've worked with lots of different artists commissioning them to create work around this project. And these are just some of the key people we've commissioned as part of the project. There's so much to say, but not enough time. So here's some of our networking that we've done as part of that project. Net Zero Vision game, illustrations by Philip Harris. These are different communities, visualisations of how they can become net zero. Yelmton, Torbay, a very large scale 40-foot mural here, designed by Kate Crawford. Ashley Potter and team developing an animation which captures the visions of people across Devon. We've also started a programme called the Creative Commissionings Programme, and we have Jim Farrow-Jones, who's also physically here, so please say hello to Jim, this is Jim here, who created an amazing project engaging with communities around theatre and around nature connectedness. And I just go back, and this is Vicky Cutler, who started this brilliant project, which is from field to fabric, creating a field of flax, again with different communities. Another excellent project. And racing to the end, the Greenmaker Initiative, which I'll be talking about in more detail later. So that's just a little snapshot of some of the things we've been doing in the creative area at Low Carbon Devon. So thank you, Roberta, for the opportunity to introduce that.
This day has arisen from a project called the Transitioning to Sustainable Production Across the UK Theatre Sector. And as I said at the beginning, one of the things that interests us most, or that has arisen through this project, is the need to actually be communicating and working with people across sectors. And so one of the things I said in person before you joined us online, for those of you who have joined us online, is how exciting it is, particularly to have so many craftspeople and makers here. And it's really exciting to have us actually have Emma talking about the Green Maker project, not only as a model of networking, but also to start thinking more about the connections between theatre and other sectors, especially creative sectors and the creative industries, because it seems that often we have an awful lot to learn from each other, but we reinvent the book. Let me stay on topic though. So the purpose of this project and where it comes from, just to situate the day. The project has been a co-commission from the Creative Industries Policy and Evidence Centre and Arts Council England. It's a 9-month project. We are collaborating with the Theatre Group in this, and you can also see a few logos down at the bottom. I am currently based at Royal Holloway, University of London, and we are partnering today in particular with University of Plymouth, Low Carbon Devon. on this part of the project. Most of you have already met Siobhan. She is the research assistant on the project, and you will be meeting Paddy later. He is in the real room, and we've been working very, very closely with Paddy to design this project and to monitor it and make sure it works. The main question that we're asking through the project is, what are the challenges preventing low carbon and low waste theatre making in the UK, and what are the infrastructural requirements to enable solutions? So that's pretty much driving all of the work we are doing. For those of you who do not know the Theatre Green Book, I think that it's possible that many people in the room do, both rooms. Both the virtual room, the remote room, and our in-person room. But the Theatre Green Book, of the very, very short version of the Theatre Green Book, which Paddy will be talking a bit more about later, is that it is a 3-volume book that was published last year in 2021. The first volume is Sustainable Productions, and Sustainable Productions features best practice at the time and guidelines for low waste, low carbon production. It sets out standards, 3 standards that companies can achieve with their productions. One is baseline, the second one is intermediate, and the third one is advanced. And for each of these, there are guidelines of how much, for instance, things that you might be looking at are how many of the materials in a production have had a former life, and then at the end of it, how many of those materials are going to be reused again? What are those materials? How are they being reused and recycled at the end of the life? So it's a life cycle approach. Within weeks, the Green Book was taken up with commitments by National Theatre Scotland, National Theatre Wales, who all committed to making their productions to baseline standards. So there was a huge take-up in the theatre industry. The chart that you can see here comes from the Sustainable Productions, and it's just some of the founding principles of the Theatre Green Book, doing more with less, using reused components, and so on. There are 2 other books in the Theatre Green Book. The second one is Theatre Buildings, Sustainable Buildings, and the third one is Operations. Obviously, they all work together, and Paddy's going to talk a bit later in the day about sustainable buildings in particular. But the focus of our project has always been on sustainable productions. The project focuses on 3 Green Book case studies, and I'm going to take you through those Green Book case studies in a moment. Within those case studies, we intended to, it didn't quite work out that way, but we intended to focus on 5 green milestones within the production process. So for those of you in the theatre, that would start with a concept meeting. It would also include white card, which has been transformed into green card meetings, and go all the way through to get out and disposal as well. Within each of our case studies, there is a sustainability champion within the production team. That is something that has been, that is embedded in the Green Book structure, that there is always a sustainability champion for a production. We also are using expert mentors to support each production, but with typical grace and modesty, almost every one of our expert mentors said, "I'm not an expert." So we tend to call them sustainability sounding boards, but let me tell you, they are all experts, and you'll be hearing from all of them today in various ways. As part of our project, we have provided carbon literacy training for all members of production teams and case study organizations. Carbon literacy training is something that is recommended for all creatives and production teams members from intermediate Green Book standard onwards, but we wanted to know a bit more about how that might operate at all levels. As part of the project, we met with all of our sustainability champions and expert mentors on a number of occasions. And we also held 2 bring your own coffee online drop-in sessions where we got some more information and talked to members of the production teams. And we've also run a number of events, including an event with CAST, which is the Consortium to Advise Sustainability in Theatre. We did an online event with them about CLT, carbon literacy training for the theatre sector. And next week, I'm meeting with Equity for a Green New Deal. So there's been a lot of interest in the work and sharing insights. I'm going to quickly take you through our 3 case study productions that we've been following. These are in no particular order, even though they are numbered. But the first one I'm going to tell you about is Royal Shakespeare Company's All's Well That Ends Well, directed by Blanche McIntyre. It opened in the middle of August and it's coming down in about a week. This is our large-scale case study. I particularly like this photo because the floor is one of the big wins of this case study productions. I believe it's the first time that RSC has ever reused a stage floor, and that has made some real huge sustainability wins for them. Our second case study production is Theatre Alibi's Riverland, directed by Nikki Sved. That is our small-scale case study. Theatre Alibi is an NPO, an Arts Council England NPO. This was a community work, but also, even though it's small scale, it's actually quite large scale in relation to its positioning within its community in Exeter. And we'll be hearing lots from Alibi later. And our final case study production is National Theatre of Scotland's Exodus, directed by Debbie Hannon. It opened at the end of July. It just finished touring about a week ago. It is a touring case study, so we had a small scale, a large scale, and a touring case study. So it toured throughout Scotland. And it is also the only one of our case studies that was going for an intermediate Green Book standard. We have been asked why we didn't have an advanced Green Book standard. To the best of my knowledge, I don't know of any companies or productions that have been aiming for advanced level yet. And I think this is particularly interesting, although Paddy might correct me if I am wrong about that. So what are we producing from this project? Well, we are producing 3 case studies of those 3 productions trialing the Theatre Green Book. And those are going to be published online for other theatre makers working at similar scales to use as inspiration, to find solutions and to model certain types of activities which might be useful. We're producing a Green Book editorial report. That's a private report. What have we learned from our case studies that might help to develop the Green Book itself? I should say that the Green Book is a living document. It was never intended just to be fixed at the precise moment that it was published. It's always supposed to be improved as people use it, trial it, as practices develop, as new products develop, and so on. We're developing a policy paper, which will be published on the Creative Industries Policy and Evidence Centre website. What have we learned that should affect and could affect UK policy related to the theatre sector? And we're also producing blogs, articles, and presentations about our findings. So, some of our preliminary findings and issues are, I actually made a slide of this, and I think let me just, no, okay. So I'm going to end show. And what I'm going to do is just sort of outline a few of the issues that have come up in terms of our findings. So one of our findings, in no particular order, because I put the wrong slide up, is there has been a general agreement that carbon literacy training is a very, very good thing for companies. That the carbon literacy training which we provided was generally, it was a generic training that anybody could take, but there was a general feeling that there should be training specifically for the theatre sector. There was a difference of opinion about whether it should be within organizations, so that all of the people within an organization have an opportunity to go through the experience of carbon literacy training together, which creates a certain types of organizational community, or whether that is completely unrealistic because of the number of freelancers in the ecology of theatre making. The relationship of freelancers to the ecology and economy of theatre has been particularly significant. What it means is that despite best efforts of people trying to get production teams together from the various earliest stages of production making, it proves very, very difficult because people are often working on overlapping projects at the same time. So there are questions, for instance, about who pays freelancers to do carbon literacy training in the first place. So there are issues about bringing people in at early stages, the extra time that sustainable production often requires, possibly not more time, but a different pattern of time over a longer period. And that actually creates the need for slightly different business models as well. There are issues about the relationship between the commercial and the subsidized sector in general. So one of the failings perhaps issues that we needed to attend to and haven't, but arises from our project, is the fact that we didn't have any commercial projects. That's partially because the project is funded by Arts Council England, and we wanted to make sure that we had national portfolio organisations that we were looking at in particular, who have to report on their environmental impacts. But there are very different drivers for commercial productions, and we've heard a lot of differences between the commercial and subsidized sector, including very interesting observations about movements of personnel between those two sectors, which actually means that knowledge is shared across them, but that there is no guarantee of embeddedness within that. One of the big issues that we have discovered, and I think that we're going to be talking about this particularly in our second session today, is that there is actually a pretty big tension between carbon calculating and circular economy principles. So what we do know is that collecting data is important, but it is important because organizations need to set their own baseline standards for where their starting point is, so that they are able to measure their own impacts in a sort of more interior, internal perspective. But it is almost impossible for organizations to directly compare their carbon outputs to someone else's carbon outputs. And there is, I think we need to move away. What we have discovered is the need to move away from, there are some sort of hard fact measurements that we are going to be able to use to compare one theatre production to another theatre production, or one theatre organisation to another theatre organisation. We have certainly discovered that the absolute importance of resource sharing and also the sharing of knowledge, and this is what drove us to have our meeting today all together in particular. I think those are pretty much the main ones. I'm probably going to remember some more as soon as I stop talking, but I think that that's all for now, and many of the other ones are going to appear. So those are preliminary findings. You can see precisely how we got here today, with lots of people in the room from different sectors, the importance of place-based and regional networks, the importance of resource sharing, the importance of knowledge sharing as well.